My name is Jonah Jonathan. Thanks for tuning in to the Jazz Musician's Voice. I'm speaking today with jazz drummer Vince Ector, really one of the well-known drummers on the scene. He's played with the Who's Who. He comes out of the Philly scene primarily. He plays with a lot of different organ groups, as well as he's played with many of the legends of this music. I encountered him first at William Paterson University, where he was studying to get his degree. He's a well-known educator, and he's got some great music out there on the scene. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe, give a like to this video, share with your friends, and stay tuned because we got a lot of more feature content coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm pleased to speak with a great friend of mine, an accomplished drummer on the jazz scene, Vince Ector. Now, Vince has worked with some of the biggest names in the music of jazz, including Freddie Hubbard, Randy Weston, Slide Hampton, James Moody, Ron Carter, Pat Martino, Joey DeFrancisco, just some of the names, to name a few. So I first met you at William Paterson, where you were actually attending to get your master's degree. And you're a lecturer of jazz percussion at Princeton University. So thanks for being on the show. Let's talk about your background. You're actually originally from Philadelphia, or the so-called Philly scene. Talk about how you got involved in music and how you get started.
Cool, man. Great to be here, Jonah. Great to see you, man, you know, during all this madness. And,
yeah,
you know, this is the way we do it now. I'm so happy. We were talking earlier before we went online. I told you I'm really getting used to not making the commute these days. So I'm real pleased to be here virtually, as they say. So, yeah, Philly, you know, Philly was, you know, a hotbed of music. It still is. But when I was coming up in the 70s, in the 80s, you know, we had the great jazz musicians that came from there. We had the Philly sound. I mean, even David Bowie came and recorded, you know, one of his landmark records, maybe even more than one, at Sigma Sound, which was from walking distance from my house. So I was telling someone else earlier in the year about remembering when the Live Aid concert was held. When they had Live Aid at JFK Stadium, I was sitting on my front step and I could actually feel the subwoofers outside. So we were watching it on TV, but we could actually feel the music from the steps. So we were that close, you know. So it's a special place. And, you know, I came up, you know, playing in the street, man. You know, we would go to different parts of town and perform on the street. You know, when someone would give us electricity, we would just set up. I mean, the old Ampeg bass amps. I'd take drums, and then we'd have guitar and vocalists. So it was just all types of music everywhere. So it wasn't just, you know, jazz or R&B or funk. It was just everything. So, you know, that's part of my DNA, as they say. And you know, I was just really, really proud to be a part of that era in music. And I just continued it. I mean, I just kept going from there, and, you know, I could go on and on, but, you know, basically it was the folks I was around. I mean, guys had gigs that were, you know, would come to our house. I mean, my father was, you know, was like a brother to Mickey Roker and Sam Reed. That was one of his best friends. And Sam went on to be Teddy Pendergrass's musical director. But before that, he was also he had the house band at the Apollo Theater, the one that we had in Philadelphia. So yeah, it's just like all of this music being around us coming up was really important to our development. And, you know, I'm just, you know, glad to be a part of that legacy.
So you also, I mean, at that time you mentioned, you know, you're around Mickey Roker, Ralph Peterson Jr. You attended Temple University, but you were also what I can recall, you were in the military for a short time too, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, the
talk
temple
about
thing,
that.
yeah, the temple thing is interesting because I went to a school called GAMP, Girard Academic Music Program, and it started in the third grade is when I started going there, and it was started by a man named Jack Carr, who, you know, in hindsight, it was really one of the first charter schools in Philadelphia because it was a public school. However, we our first building was a church basement. Then from there, we moved to the military armory on Broad Street, and we had classes there. And now they have their own building. It's actually still there. When I go and see my mother, there's a building, a school building there in South Philly with a big G clef on it, and that's GAMP as well. So I was part of the first two classes to attend that school. So basically, from the third through the eighth grade, all of our general studies were supplemented by theory classes, harmony classes. I remember learning how to do figured bass, you know, in the fourth, fifth grade. And what would happen is that he would bring Temple University music ed students in to teach us as well. So we had a choir, we had a band, we would put on plays. I remember us fundraising a lot. And so on the weekends, we had the option to go to Temple as elementary school students and take music classes. And I was very young, some probably theory again, but we would take these classes. I think what was happening is that they were taking us to the campus to experience it, but we were also being taught by the maybe the masters, you know, the master's students who were actually studying music education. I suspect that, but in any event, it was a unique experience for, you know, a fifth or sixth grade child to get in a school bus on Saturday and actually go and study music on a college campus. So that was interesting. And then, you know, later on, you know, I left that school. I went to Central High in Philadelphia, graduated from Central. Then I actually started working, you know, around town, you know, outside of music. I didn't go to college right away, which is kind of the way we met, actually. And then at one point, I just, you know, I wanted to play, and I just didn't want to stay in Philadelphia. It was, you know, getting kind of strange at the time. And, you know, you're 19 years old, and things change. Your personality changes. Decided to enlist in the Army, and I did. So I got into the Army band. I went to Fort Bliss, Texas, did my basic training as a private, and came back a week later as a corporal, playing in the Army band. So that was a unique experience, to say the least.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talking about both of those things, I mean, nowadays, we so-called, in schools, the music programs are not as sophisticated. I was talking about with Ron Carter about going to the Cass Tech school and how they're taking like college level music courses, learning a couple instruments, learning theory, learning harmony, learning all of that earlier in school. And I think, unfortunately, that has regressed in some aspects to today. But at the same time, we now have like everything at our fingertips online, which can be a double-bladed sword because you gotta be able to focus on specific stuff. But as far as the military, you know, I remember talking with Rufus Reed, for example, and some of those older guys joining the military as a way to play music and
Right.
and make a living, you know. So
Exactly. It's part of our history. You know, what was interesting for me with the military aspect is that, you know, I was shocked how strong the musicians were. I mean, these guys were just, I didn't expect it to be like that. You know, I thought, of course I didn't have any experience there, but it exceeded my expectations. At the time, I met some really high level musicians, and then even when I got out and went into the reserves, I had friends that were in my unit that actually went to Peabody, while they were in the reserves, and really, really, really strong players who could really hold their own professionally. And then when you think about it, you're getting paid by the military to perform on your instrument. So that's all you do is play. I mean, you play change of command ceremonies, you play dances, you play at the officers club, you play, we play jazz, we play polka, we play everything, military ruffles and flourishes. We go to White Sands Missile Range and play change of command ceremonies and then come back that night and play a dance. So it was really a unique experience, and I wish I had stayed in a little longer because once I came back, into the reserves, then I became a civilian soldier again, and they lost me after that. And fortunately, what they lost, New York City gained.
Yeah. So let's talk about, Philadelphia is about a couple hours from New York. Let's talk about what happened next, because as I previously mentioned, you're a sideman on, countless recordings with great artists. So talk about coming to New York, what the scene was like, and some stories about that.
Sure. Okay. Definitely. So, fast forward a few years, I worked in insurance in Philadelphia for many years, and full time, steady check, benefits, but I was playing on the weekends and sometimes during the week. What was unique about my situation is that I came up as a child musician. So from the time I was about 9 years old, I was working in clubs. My father used to take me to the gig, and he would stay there and wait for me. So I did that for years. I mean, literally years, and mostly in funk and R&B bands. I didn't start playing jazz until I was maybe 19, 20 years old. I mean, just really playing it seriously. It was always around because my father was a jazz pianist, and he would bring people to town. He had a lot of good friends. I mean, Barry Harris, to this day, he keeps saying it. He has pictures for me of him and my dad. He said my father played piano like Bud Powell. Had a lot of respect for him. But my dad would bring people like Phineas Newborn to town. He booked a club called the Postal Card. So, and then he would have been. My father was born in 1931, so he would be a little bit younger than most of the musicians who are still alive from that era. I mean, they all grew up in South Philly with the Heath brothers. So I'm not sure how old Tootie is. I think my father is a little older than Tootie, but wasn't as old as Jimmy. And but they all knew each other, coming up together. So long story short, it was like a family thing. So just playing as a child and playing as a child, I had to get away from it. So after the Army, I couldn't play music. My father had died tragically, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So you're thinking, 10 years old, now you're 20, and what else can I do? So anyway, I did that for a number of years. So, but at the same time, I started playing jazz, learning how to play it. I was pretty sad. So I would go to Ortlieb's in Philadelphia and hang with Mickey. And eventually I got good enough that, I could sub some gigs for him. And after a while, folks started to tell me, you should go to New York. You should go to New York. So when I turned 29 years old, I moved there full time. So I was a latecomer. When I got to New York, it was 94, 95. And, Smalls was hopping, fell in right away to the scene, started playing, meeting a lot of cats through Jason Linder had a big band, and everybody was in it. I mean, Avishai Cohen, Omer Avatal, and actually Avishai was the one that talked me into moving here because he had an apartment, and we would do some gigs in Philly. So a lot I'm skipping, but at the time, Ralph Peterson was in Philadelphia. He had a band, and he was playing trumpet. Avishai played bass, Ori Kane played piano, I played drums. So Avishai says, you should come up and just do it, man. So I started coming up and staying there and renting a room from him. And then I met Omer, I met Jason, all the cats from Israel were living in that building. So I met all these guys. Again, Jason's band, a lot of guys, Khalil Bell, Greg Tardy, Myron Walden, everyone was in this band. And I still have an advertisement from it. I'm going to try to find it and put it up on Instagram soon. But everyone was in that band. So it was a unique situation because it allowed me to meet a lot of cats, who would go on to do great things. We would go in there at 6 o'clock in the evening, and we would come out 6 o'clock in the morning, literally. So it was like, yes. And, at the time, I fell into some really good gigs, and I would stay, and I would go back to Philly for a while, and I would come back, and when my money would run out, I would come back to New York and make a week somewhere, hang out in every spot. When my money would run out, I would go back to Philly again. So I was kind of halfway here, halfway back there, because New York was never cheap. So
yeah.
When I finally, as you know, when I finally decided to move full time, I moved to Jersey City, and then I just kept at it, man. I just kept at it. It's definitely a grind, but you have to be in it to win it. And I think what I'm most appreciative about New York is that it pushed me. When I came here, there guys are really, 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 really playing their instruments well, and they were much younger than me, most of them. But then I got to meet the masters. I got to see Art. I got to see Elvin, Billy Higgins. I mean, everyone was here. Bradley's was still open. I mean, you'd make the gig, and then you go to Bradley's at 2 o'clock, and you just can't even explain it now. It's like a different era, So, yeah. I mean, that's how it happened, man, and I never went home. I stayed here. I'm still here.
Well, it's really something, talking about that being a different era as opposed to today, because now we have the digital age. We have computers, we have Netflix, we have everything. People aren't hanging anymore. And then we have coronavirus and all that entails. That era of where you could just go and hang and be playing and doing music, unfortunately is now becoming a thing of the past, at least for now, as opposed to what it used to be. You're fortunate to be at that time where you could see some of those original masters of your instrument, as you previously just mentioned, Blakey and Higgins and Elvin Jones. So, I remember, you talk about, for example, working with Ron Carter, for example, for us.
Yeah, well, that was interesting because it's a really good friend of mine, Leon Dorsey, great bass player. Leon's a professor up at Berkeley now, but we go back to the time when I came to New York. After I got here for a while, I started working with a pianist named Roy Merriweather. He's from Dayton, Ohio. And as you know, Dayton is a rich musical town. I mean, home of the Ohio Players, Slave, Jilly's Jazz Club. I mean, so I met Lee through Roy. And Roy was working with Gloria Lynne at the time. So he wanted to get me on that gig. Eventually he did. Lee was on the gig as well, along with Greg Scaff, who's a long time friend. So we would travel. Funny story is that when we would travel with Gloria, we wound up having our daughters in the same month. All of our daughters were born in February of 1998 for some reason. So we kind of equate that to the tour that we were doing with Gloria. But in any event, I got that gig, and years later, Ron is a student of, Leon is a student of Ron Carter. So I think around the time I'd done my second CD at Leon's studio at his house. He still has a great studio there. And around that time, they wanted to do an Oscar Pettiford tribute concert down at one of the city college. I can't think of it right now, but it's downtown. They still have a series there now. And he asked Ron to participate, and he did. He would come. He made all the rehearsals at Leon's house, and then we made the concert. And I just remember him being so nice and so warm and supportive. And, he told me, he and Oscar were really, really good friends, and he was really honored to be involved in anything that would be a tribute to him. And from what I can recall, it was like a small big band. I think Robin Eubanks was there, a lot of different cats that, that were really, 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 at the top of the food chain, as they say, and still are. But it was something memorable I never forget. And with Ron, it seemed like what I remember the most is that when I would play the quarter note on the cymbal, it was like he was guiding my hand. I mean, it locked up so well. It was like he was playing it. Does that sound funny? It's interesting, right? Yeah, that's how
the science. He's a scientist. Yeah. The beat.
And I had never felt it like that before. And I worked with a lot of great bass players. I never felt it like that before. It was like he was guiding me, and it was a beautiful day. I'm wondering if they even recorded that, if there's some kind of documentation on it. So that's my Ron Carter experience. I mean, similarly, with Randy Weston. I mean, with Randy, I was actually in one of his bands, and it took me years to learn how to play with him, because his perception of time is not straightforward. It's different, and it's rooted in the African drum tradition. You see, so which is not necessarily played, but it's felt. And so it took me years to really be comfortable playing with Randy. And then once I did, it was like a new world opened up to me. I felt like the puzzle had been completed. And he never told me what to play. That I remember. He never said what, do this or do that. Maybe you should. Nothing. He would just talk to you. He would give us history. Talk to us about the history of the music, the history of our ancestors, and then we would play. So
yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so you worked with so many of these greats, also James Moody, and then as a leader, you've produced a few records now too.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about some of these, because you're pretty into the whole organ jazz thing, and you work with.
Yeah, I couldn't. It's funny. Part of it was economics. And Philly has a huge organ tradition. I just kind of fell into it. I think it was part economics, trying to lead a band and actually work and pay guys what they need to make. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to take out a sextet or even a big band. I mean, I remember, when we were playing big band in the 90s, I think, we'd work all night. We'd make like $20, $25. It's just, I always wanted to be able to pay musicians properly. So part of it was economics, having a tight group that was small but had a full sound. And then, when I started experimenting with coming to New York, part of it was because of Charles Earland, who I did my first record date with. He was from South Philly like me. So he would come to town and he would hire me. He found out about me. My doctor's niece was the receptionist, and she used to always show me the records. Black Talk. Uncle Charlie has a new record out. Of course, it's 12-inch vinyl. She showed me another one. Uncle Charlie has a new record out. She knew I was a young drummer, and I heard that for years. And then one day, he called me. I have a gig in Philadelphia. He was living in Chicago at the time, and there was a spot called Morgan's up in Germantown, and Morgan's had about 50 steps to get up there. It was in an old house, like huge house, and they didn't have drums. That's why I remember it. So you had to hump the drums up there, and of course, Charles Earland calls you, man. Of course I'll be there. Of course I'll climb those 50 steps with this 22-inch bass drum, which I was playing at the time. And every time he came, he would call me. And then one day he called me. He said, "Man, Buddy Williams can't make this record date. You want to make it?" Of course. So I came and I recorded Ready and Able at Rudy Van Gelder's studio, my first record date. Internationally released record date, at least, was done at Rudy's. And, then our relationship continued after that. But that's how I got to the organ. I think it was an affinity for that. Seeing Don Patterson as a kid, playing duo with Bobby Durham. I used to see that a lot. Just the two of them. McGriff was from Philly, Jimmy Smith. The list goes on and on. So anyway, that's what kind of put me in that vein. But if you recall, my first two CDs did not have an organ. It was full band. Rhythm Master and Renewal of the Spirit. Organatomy began that trip, and then the latest one, Organatomy Trio Plus, behind me, that continues it. I might do one more. I have enough content to put out a live CD. I'm thinking about doing it as soon as I can be employed again and afford to pay for it.
Yeah.
But I haven't. It's halfway there. We'll see. We'll see what happens. With this Corona and the uncertainty of the business, you have to be very careful of how you spend your dollars right now. So we'll see what happens. But there might be one more chapter.
Well, as I previously mentioned in the beginning, I met you at William Patterson, and you were attending for your degree. Kind of an older cat, and I was a young guy. Didn't really know much about you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Because when I left New York, when I left Philadelphia, man, I was in a really good position to get a degree from the University of Pennsylvania. It was a program at my job, and I was going there at night for free. And music, we do a lot of things for this music. Do you notice? We give up a lot of things. There's a lot of, relationships lost and opportunities lost, but the gains are more than worth it. But in any event, when I decided to come and record with Charles Earland, that was the step that I needed to actually begin to move here. And I wound up quitting that job, quitting school, and moving here full time. So, I'm sitting around now years later. I have my own kids, and I'm thinking, wow, this is something that I always wanted to finish. It's like that race, that 25-mile race, and then at the 23rd mile, you just couldn't go any longer, and you want to go back and finish it. That's what it was like for me. So I decided to enroll and go back to school. And I enrolled at William Patterson, and James Williams was there at the time. So I actually my tenure was from James Williams through Mulgrew there. Yeah, so interesting. I met you, and I finished, and I graduated all A's and B's. I got my degree, and I made my kids come to the graduation ceremony. I think that was more important to me than actually getting the degree, for them to see that.
Yeah, I remember we were both at the same ceremony, and
right. You remember what happened, right?
uh,
You remember that day? Yeah.
I mean, it was that big. It was at the what was it, the Izod Center or something, right?
Right. Remember
Yeah.
what happened to the keynote speaker?
I man, it's a while ago.
Yeah.
So
The booing. The
oh
booing. The
yes,
booing.
yes, the booing because
Remember that? Yeah. The booing. Yeah.
it was the conservative person, right? Something
It
like
was it was the lieutenant governor at the
yeah,
time under
yeah,
Christie.
yeah.
And I just the people just started booing. I don't think she could finish that speech. Do you think she did? I don't recall her finishing the speech.
I don't know. I what I do know is probably in this modern Trump era, she wouldn't have gotten that same reception. She might have got something different. But you
Right.
know,
I think that was the beginning of the partisan divide at our graduation ceremony.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a special day, and they were there. And you know, now my oldest, she has a degree in music now. My
Wow.
youngest, she's graduating from high school. She wants to pursue music, so I think I put a spark in them as well. So mission accomplished. Mission
Yes,
accomplished.
that's great. Speaking about the field of jazz academia, I mean, after that, I mean, um, we could talk a little bit. I mean, you worked extensively with Jazz House Kids, and then now you're a professor at Princeton for jazz drumming. So talk about being an educator in jazz before we finish up.
Okay. Yeah. So you know, Jazz House Kids. I did a lot of work with them. Primarily, the work that I did with them was through my organization, Arts for Kids. And what I do with Arts for Kids is that I do a lot of work in the pre-K through 12 realm. And we don't just do music. We do music, dance, drama, visual art, technology. But a part of our programming is a drumming class that I lead, and it's done a lot in. We work a lot with children with special needs, children in hospital settings, and it's more like a pseudo music therapy drumming class. So this is kind of what I was doing there, but you know, with the jazz students, because they really wanted to. They thought that everyone, which was true, everyone should have a background in drumming in order to help their rhythm. And you remember when we were in ear training together, how all of the great students there, no matter how well they played their instruments, they always lagged. Everyone did poorly on the rhythm. Do you recall that? I don't know if we were in the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
class for that, but at
yeah.
least in my classes, the rhythm stuff always threw the large majority of the students. And so, you know, fast forward to that, we decided to put my drum class in there to help each student with rhythm, and it worked. So, you know, we did that quite a bit for a few years, and at the Montclair Jazz Festival, and then I started subbing at NJ Pack Jazz for Teens, and which is actually virtual now. So I've done that for a few years, and simultaneously I got the position at Princeton. I think I've been there about 8 years now. This might be my ninth year, and you know, just you know, wanting to teach. I think again it goes back to my GAMP days. I mean, being exposed to early arts education, you know, as a elementary school kid, it kind of ingrained something in me, and I wanted to share that with anyone that I could, which is, you know, why we founded Arts for Kids, which is why I continue to teach, and you know, it's a large part of what I do, and what I feel that my mission in life is, if anything, to really stay true to the roots of the music and to pass that on to the next generation, because you know, this is, you know, it's not just what you learn in the class. It's cultural as well. I mean, you have to deal with the history of the music, why it's here, where it came from, who it came from, in order to know where it's going. So my commitment is strong there, and it's something that I really enjoy. So now, you know, with the virtual environment, it's a challenge because a lot of students are really deciding that they want to take a break from school. They're basically zoomed out. And, we're losing them. Plus, we're losing the social aspect of the music. As you know, this music is about socializing and being around each other and feeling the vibes from each other as a human being. And you just can't do it as well through the TV screen.
Yeah.
So, I'm just grateful that I'm still a part of that, and hopefully when we come out of this, we'll be stronger. We'll have more tools in our tool belt because, as you know, this is never going away. This virtual environment is always going to be a part of what we do from here on out. It might not be as dominant as it is now. However, it will always be included in what we do moving forward.
Yeah. Well, Vince, thanks so much for speaking with us. People can check you out at your website, right? VinceEctor.com.
That's correct.
What are the future projects we can expect to see in the coming months, aside from what you already talked about?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I know for a fact there's going to be a release for Stanley Cowell that I'm on, a live recording that we did at Keystone Corner right before this thing hit. That's going to be released probably in October. So that'll go up on the site. I plan on releasing this live CD of mine. I'm starting to write some tunes here at the house, and we'll see what happens. I mean, but, again, man, everything is kind of up in the air at this point. We just don't know. I mean, with the live performance aspect and even not being able to leave the country. I was watching the news today, and they're starting cruises in Italy now, and they said, but no American citizens are allowed to come. and I've done the jazz cruise every year for the last few years with Houston Person, so that's probably going to happen in 2022. So that's something I can count on as well, possibly. But no, man, just taking it one day at a time. We'll see what happens. Just check my site. I'm going to put up everything as they come in, and we're going to continue to play this music. We're going to continue to stream these concerts from my backyard here, as you've seen, recently, until it gets too cold to do so. And then we'll see what happens. So, again, if those folks that are watching, if you don't have the disc, pick it up, digital download, Bandcamp. It does matter. It helps to support what we're doing here during this unprecedented time, and support, all of your favorite artists. If you have someone that you really dig, go and buy their digital download and support the cause. Tell your friends to buy it, because it does add up, and it's a really good thing. And it helps us to pursue the next project, because as you know, in the environment that we're living in now, most artists are well invested into the projects that they put out. So we need the revenue in order to give you something new. So give us something to work with, and we'll give you something new for your collection. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the future. And stay healthy. Yes. Wash your hands, mask up. Don't play with this. Please don't play with it. We lost too many of our friends and loved ones to this disease, and I hope to see all of you out in the streets soon enough.
Thanks again, Vince.
Thank you, brother.